Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Batman Arkham Knight. Oh boy, what a game. It's 2014. There's rumors about a new mainline Batman game. It's just a matter of time we find out what it is. Days, weeks, months go by, until finally a leak is shown to quench the thirst fans have been waiting for since 2011. A GameStop employee received marketing material for the next game. A logo is shown. Batman's logo is submitted on flames, referring back to the tagline Azrael said in Arkham City, "Gotham will burn." A week goes by and the game is leaked. It's named Arkham Knight. It's a new game made by Rocksteady, only for the next gen consoles. Another week goes by. It's May 4th, 2014, and the game is finally shown off. Batman fans cream their pants. This looks amazing. New information is being shared around from the creators, stating this is the last time to do with Batman, so they want to make this the best Batman game ever. They share so many new details about the game. The Knight is a new character and that we can now ride Batman's Batmobile. But to keep us waiting, they release a one-shot comic bridging the gap between City and Night. E3 2015, the game looks amazing. Pre-orders are live. June 23rd, 2015, the game comes out, and it sucks for many reasons, too many to list, so let's start naming them. By far the biggest fuck up comes from WB's handling of the PC version. What happened? They messed up so badly, it's unbelievable, especially with the shit they were doing right before the game came out. The game was a complete mess back in 2015. Nothing was right. So much of the game was suffering from lag, stutters, audio, and too many glitches to show. The game just outright kept crashing for many different reasons, and the only compliment you can give is how the devs managed to port it over. So you might be wondering, how is this WB's fault? Well, Rocksteady is working on a console version of the game and they needed all the time to focus just on those versions, which is fine. By all means, make one version of the game complete before you work on the others, if you only have so much time. WB had to suck it up, accept this was Rocksteady's decision, so WB, the geniuses they are, didn't really care that much about a PC version. Until one day, some person came in and said, "Guys, what about a PC version?" All of the executives must have sprung up and said, "Get Iron Galaxy Studios to do it. They worked on Origins, they can do this." Now, Origins when it came out was also full of bugs, that was also outright broken, but wasn't as bad as this. So you would think if a game was given to a development studio who worked on the previous game which had its own server problems, you would outsource it to someone else. Nope, not WB. Now this is where it gets funky. The PC version was only handled by 12 people. Do you understand how insane that is? Compare that to how big Rocksteady was when they worked on the game. The fact that 12 people managed to port it over is a miracle. In addition to that, speculation rose that WB knew the state it was in for months and they did not care. They wanted easy money fast. Fans rose their pitchforks and held WB for answers and solutions. WB spoke out and said they were going to fix it. As of then, you could have refunded it, no issues. Many months go by and they finally managed to fix it. So in a way, they at least stuck to their word, but this should have never happened to begin with. It's such a shame because all this PC port did was give Iron Galaxy a bad name, when they're actually fantastic with the games they usually work on. And I'm not too sure whose fault this is, but when the game came out on the PC, Nvidia was showing off Nvidia software applications to make the game be more realistic, with real lighting, better shadows, more fog, more rain, etc. But that's possibly the biggest lie. This game wasn't running fine. They said 60 FPS easy peasy, when it was actually capped at 30 when it came out. And even today, softworks can break the game. So that was a bit of deceptive marketing, huh? What's more, WB decided not to send out any review copies because they knew if reviewers got the Steam version, they'll find out just how broken it is, so that's a bit scummy. To be completely honest, really, this was a period where WB didn't care for the PC market at all. 3 of the biggest games to come out during that time were all broken: Mortal Kombat X, Dying Light, and Batman Arkham Knight. Thankfully, all 3 of these have been fixed, but whoever said these jobs were fine, I hope they got fired. Aside from the PC issues, there's still so much wrong with the game, but most of the issues come from story and gameplay. So let's start off with gameplay, but here's a story synopsis. The game is set months after City. Gotham has been silent with almost little to no crime for months. The city is the safest it's ever been. That is until one day Scarecrow submits one of his minions to showcase how powerful his new toxin is. With Gotham in shock, Scarecrow tells everybody they have until tomorrow to leave. Gotham has now fallen to the scum and villainy, the rats infesting the light. Only Batman can save the city. With all of this occurring, a new army arises. They call themselves the Militia. They are led by a new villain who calls himself the Arkham Knight, who somehow knows about Batman's combat ability and can go toe to toe with him. This is where I will leave the synopsis, but I have to stress a very early spoiler, and it's at some point during the story Batman goes to stop Scarecrow, but he ultimately fails and Scarecrow manages to fill him with some of the gas. Thus Batman starts to hallucinate the Joker. In any case, that's it for the spoiler until the story. And oh boy, this game is something. To start off, gameplay. I'm gonna have to split gameplay into two parts as there are two critical modes, Batman and the Batmobile. When talking about Batman, he's crazy fun. He's undertaken many improvements I wanted for a long time now. In combat, Batman's slower but hits harder and faster. This makes him feel more grounded now than ever. My issue before was that he was a little too fast for his own good. He will somehow swoop instantaneously from one place to another. Now he has to build up a lot more momentum before he could do that. He almost felt weightless previously. So the fact that Rocksteady decided to make him slower, I appreciate. And I think it's justified with the way the combat has been redefined with some new improvements. He can finally start attacking grunts when they're on the ground instead of waiting for them to get up. What's even more badass is that Batman can now pick up enemies off the floor, stand them upright just to take them down again. How do you not look at that and go, that's badass, dude? Additionally, the combat is far more forgiving this time around. When you counter someone, you have time to react. For example, when 2 or 3 more grunts are trying to attack you at once, the game will slow down time for a fraction of 3 seconds just so you can catch your breath for a bit. Whereas before, you had to press it right there and then with no breathing room. Now you can at least keep the combo chain going. And this coincides with the combat. It's far more environmental based now and I love it. It's so much fun going around taking out grunts with the environment. Those boxes that you couldn't use before unless someone threw at you, now you can use it before they can. Those enemies with melee weapons like bats or pipes, you can use it to your advantage now. You can swipe the weapons from their hands or pick it up off the floor, and it's super cool. Now you have the upper hand when fighting those guys, especially the ones with shield and batons. You don't even need to counter them anymore. And what's really surprising is when you're fighting near a wall or a barricade, Batman has a set of new animations and it looks super cool. He'll start doing a bit of parkour to show off his new suit's flexibility. Additionally, the combat has been given environmental takedowns, so when you're close to certain objects in combat, stuff will be highlighted blue. This will let you take out enemies in pretty brutal ways. I usually use it on the big guys, who have 5 different variations now. You've got the shield boys, you got the knife boys, you got the electric boys, you got the standard boys, and you got the even bigger boys. And what's really cool about these big boys is that it's just one unit. So you could be fighting one of these guys and they can change automatically on the fly. So you need to think while you're fighting. Thankfully it doesn't happen too often, so you don't need to worry that much. And that's just the big boys. Even the regular grunts have been given an improvement. Well, to an extent. Now they can tackle Batman and there's a new type who can revive their own guys. I hate them so much. The medic is a new type of enemy who's probably the worst thing to exist. I love them, but god damn when I'm in a good combo chain, you're just reviving those same guys and are then electrifying them. And it's really annoying to fight those guys because to remove the shock there's only one way. You have to grapple hook onto them. I don't like this and I don't understand why only one way. Especially because when fighting the big guys who are electrified, you would have to shoot them with the EMP gun to remove it. But if you shoot the grunts, they only get pushed back. So it's really weird to fight 2 electric type of enemies who are taken out in different ways. Either way, the medic is a really cool addition and I hope to see them in the future because they do provide something different. However, the combat isn't perfect. I have some personal gripes with it. Two gadgets in the game are unlocked very late in the story, the electric charge and the ice grenade, but with the ice grenade you can completely miss it for the entire duration of the game. I find this really silly. Why include it in every other game, but then for this one the game never once mentions it or makes any hints towards it. The game wants you to explore, but none of the other games were like this. If this was a prominent occurrence for the series, I could get behind it. But because this is the first time this has happened, and it's gonna be the last time it's gonna happen, I don't know why they just didn't give it to you. Additionally, the Riddler goons are now regular goons. When you take them out, they become unconscious like everybody else. Only in Origins did they change that. I personally prefer that rather than them just getting knocked out. I'm surprised Rocksteady didn't change this. Plus, a slight nitpick I have is with the guys who can charge towards Batman. While it's fairly easy to take them out and you have so many options, the grappling hook isn't one of them, but I feel like it should have been though. If they're charging at you and you apply more momentum, they should trip and fall. Instead, the grappling hook will somehow grow a conscious and forget about them, ruining a good combo. And this leads into my next point. Something I've always had an issue about the Arkham games is the combo meter and how it's implemented. You whiff an attack or mistime it, it's gone. I wish they would have improved on it. Make it more forgiving or have it be longer. The fact is, when I'm in a good combo chain, I'm in the groove and it shouldn't be going away because of time or when I misplace one attack. This is by far the best Batman experience I've ever had. It's a lot of fun with how Rocksteady managed to improve Batman's combat. And this doesn't even include all the amazing ways Rocksteady handles stealth. Stealth has undergone a whole new experience thanks to one aspect the team managed to fulfill, and that's the goddamn fear takedown. Holy shit, is it so cool. So when you're doing stealth, there's a little icon on the screen that shows fear. When it's glowing, you can take down multiple enemies at the same time without anyone getting in the way. And as long as enemies are close to each other, you can use it from any position you want, and it's amazing. It is by far the most helpful aspect of stealth, and I absolutely love it. Especially because it can be used in so many variety of ways. Not just stealth, it can be used as a head start during combat. And if the next Batman game doesn't include this, I'm just gonna be sad. Outside from fear takedowns, stealth has improved remarkably. It's the same as it's ever been, but they managed to fix most of the issues I had with it. Now there's no incident where Batman can't take someone out when they're down or near the stairs like in Origins. Plus, the new ways Batman can silently take out grunts is a blessing. Now when you're hiding behind cover, Batman can use his grappling hook to drag enemies towards him only to choke them out. It's so useful. Overall, that's all there is to talk about with the changes. It's largely the same. But what's really changed is the enemy's AI. They now react to you a lot more, taking them out silently. In the previous games, the only aspect where the AI would react would be by the leader, who would tell the grunts Batman's been taking them out one by one, so they need to be more vigilant. But in Arkham Knight, the Knight will tell them what to do. Now they will stick as a group, they'll start putting down turrets, mines, keep an eye on the rooftops, and make sure no one's under the graders. Unfortunately, this aspect where the leader will tell his guys Batman's been taking them out one by one is a bit delayed. For some reason, by the time I've taken out most of them, then will the Knight react. It's really weird. And I swear the AI have 20/20 vision now. It's far easier for them to spot Batman. There has been a multitude of times where I am just waiting for a grunt to pass by only for his friend to spot me, so I have to get away. Staying in one place is not a viable strategy anymore, and I really like that. Now the game encourages you to explore, so you need to use everything around you. Before it was so easy to take enemies out because they had a lack of vision, but this game is fantastic in that it has a lot of ways to take grunts out, so you want to keep moving around. In addition to that, when enemies do spot you, the game slows down time so you can react how you want to. I welcome this as it gives me more time to think. Whereas before, when you're spotted, you can only run away. Now the game allows you to throw down a smoke grenade, throw a batarang, or just evade via your grappling hook. The different ways you can react really make me feel like Batman. Furthermore, another two improvements to the stealth is the new enemy type who can't be spotted using the detective mode. You have to use normal vision just to see them. And the drone who when it spots you will be able to tell everyone where you are while zapping at you. These improvements really make the stealth section more tactical. The satisfaction of when you execute stealth without being seen is another feeling. But one aspect where I think the game falls short is the upgrades. There's almost no reason to upgrade anything. Now, there are many upgrades that you should be purchasing because they'll help you in the long run, but for the most part, they're useless. I feel like most of them have been thrown in just to fill in the blanks. Like there's one where you have to throw your batarang at grunts as you're gliding, but I find this useless as the grunts will just get up with no problem after. Or even there's one where you can super stun enemies, but I don't see how this is useful at all. Every time I want to use it, I get punched out of it. But that's not to say all of it's bad. There are some really good ones, and my favorite is whenever you can upgrade a grappling hook. You can make it so much faster, it's sort of crazy when you compare it to Origins. The map in this game is huge, so unlocking more speed for the grappling hook is exhilarating as you're gliding through the city skyline. It's really fun. Overall, it's not too bad, but most of the issues with the upgrades come from the Batmobile. This is one area you want to upgrade everything. At least I did. Holy shit, is that Batmobile the worst aspect of this game. It is by far the worst garbage. Now, by itself it's fine, but you use it so much that it becomes absolutely ridiculous. But let's stop breaking it down. So the main contention is that it's bloody repetitive. The Batmobile can only do so much, and that's fine. It's just how much of it you actually do. So the Batmobile has two modes, one for normal driving while the other is tank mode. And without talking about the story, one of the side quests that you do is called Bomb for Disarmament. It involves the battle mode destroying a certain number of militia artillery. Now from the surface, it's not a bad idea to have something like this, but the main issue is that there's way too many of these, rounding up to 15 of them. Now you might be saying to yourself, that doesn't sound too bad. Well, the issue lies with that they're all the same with no variety. Every time I played one of these, my mind goes numb because it's so boring. So the first time you do it, you have maybe 20 vehicles to get rid of. Then the second time you do it, it becomes 25. Then the third time you do it, it becomes 30. It becomes insane. I hate it. Every time I do one of these, I just want it to end. And 15 isn't even a big number, but when the game forces you to do this garbage, that's where my main issue lies. Within the story mode, the game forces you to do this hot trash. There's a section where you're riding the Batcar in the tank mode for at least 1 hour. It is so infuriating. Who the hell said this is a good idea? There's nothing interesting about this. It makes sense in the story, but it is way too long. And that's not even half of it. It somehow gets worse. So you know Batman, he's pretty versatile. He can do combat, he can do stealth. Well, what about the Batmobile? Don't worry about it. It has stealth too. For context, throughout the story, the Arkham Knight will send out these special tanks to take care of Batman. But in order for Batman to take them out, he needs to go behind them silently and shoot them with a missile. And just for my explanation, it doesn't sound too bad, but when there are 6 of them, holy shit, is it annoying. And this isn't a one-time occurrence. Instead, it happens like 3 to 4 times during story. It's not hard to get rid of them, it's just a nuisance. The tanks have 360 long-range turret turning, so if you're in the proximity of one, you have to make sure it doesn't spot you, otherwise you have to drive away just to come back later. And when you do destroy it, they'll come searching for you anyways. This whole section feels like filler, something Rocksteady needed to include to pad out the game or try to make the Batcar feel more useful. But all this does is makes me hate the Batcar even more. With or without stealth, the Batcar continues to get worse. For some reason, the team at Rocksteady decided stealth wasn't enough. They had to include puzzles. Batmobile puzzles. This is by far the most aggravating part of the game, and they're not even that bad. I just hate them so much with a passion. I'd rather do anything else. They're just not fun. They're sluggish. When you have to grapple down, it's incredibly slow. When you have to go back up, it's again slow. If it was faster, I wouldn't have an issue with it, but because of how dry the puzzles are, they're just not fun. They become incredibly dull, and throughout the story, the game forces you to do some of these in order to complete the story, and I just don't understand why this was forced down our throats. Thankfully, the normal puzzles are here, but to play devil's advocate, the Batmobile does have its good parts, and they come in the form of what I expect the Batmobile to do. I like going fast, I like chasing cars, I like the destruction of the environment. So I really liked when Rocksteady added the side quest Armed and Dangerous. This is essentially a car chase for a game of cat and mouse. As Batman, your goal is to stop armed militia trucks from roaming Gotham streets, while they try to stop you by shooting rockets or by getting smaller cars to shoot you down. And what makes this fun is how they are actively trying to evade you while trying to stop you. But because of how powerful the Batmobile is, you can just shove the smaller cars away, destroying them. I really like this side quest. But this suffers from the same issue. It can get boring fast, because outside of chasing them, you're not doing anything different, but I still really like it. I like the thrill, and I'm not too sure how they could have improved upon it. It's supposed to be a game of hit and run, so in that manner I think they succeeded. But what I think would have rapidly improved the Batmobile is to not have it be as it is, but instead let the player create their own version of the vehicle with custom parts, so you can in theory have your own vehicle, either by specializing it in speed or combat or keeping it balanced. But I doubt this will ever happen, as the game was already struggling on next gen, and this will take longer to develop. But imagine you could though, imagine you could have different Batmobiles that have different parts and have different stats. How cool would that be? But there are a few times in the game where you do upgrade a Batmobile, but it's not drastic, only a few minor adjustments. But you wanna know the most bullshit thing about a Batmobile? It's that it has 4 boss fights and Batman has 1. How is that even possible? That's insane. And they're not even that good. The fights are all crap. They're all incredibly stupid. Whoever decided this was a good idea is insane. How do you go from 4 boss fights in the last game to 1 here? And I'm not even talking about Origins. I am completely baffled by this decision. And it's not the only decision. At some point, Slade joins the game, but in order to fight him, you have to do all of the malicious side quests, which is fine if it's a good payoff. However, here it's such garbage. In Origins, he's the best goddamn fight you'll have. He challenges you in hand-to-hand combat and has stages where you both are even. But here, it's so pathetic. You fight him in a tank, and after you destroy the tank, he'll be captured. What happened here? I beat him within 15 seconds. This fight is an absolute joke. Rocksteady didn't want to make a car game, but maybe they should have, cause that's where all the effort went into. And just to hammer that point in, within the first hour of the story, you use the Batmobile 8 times. That is ridiculous. And it progressively gets worse. There's a website that describes what the 3rd mission of the game is like, and after I display it, you'll come to the realization on what I'm on about. So here it is. Again, keep in mind, this is just the 3rd mission, so you can imagine what it's like later on. I'm almost done talking about the Batmobile, but in order to talk about the last section, I need to mention Riddler. What did Rocksteady do to him? There's no reason for him to be like this. I like the meta reason, but in game it's never explained. For some reason, Riddler now has somewhat changed as a character. He started creating racetracks for Batman, but I don't understand why racetracks. This could have easily been another villain. And what would happen if Batman didn't have a Batmobile? Or what would happen if it got destroyed? Would he then wait for Batman to acquire another one? It's pretty dumb. The racetracks are time trials and puzzles, not really a race with any opponents. It's you versus the clock. When going around the sewers, you have a gimmick where you can control certain mechanics to pass the race, and I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty fun. But it's boring to look at. The level design is dead. All you're gonna see is grey and green. Regardless of that, the score I'm giving to gameplay is divided between Batman and the Batcar, where Batman is a 10 out of 10. It's better than City and anything before that, with many improvements. In my opinion, this is the definitive Batman gameplay. Unfortunately, what was a big contender for me for giving this a 9 was no real boss fights, and that really bugged me, but the improvements outweigh the negatives, so 10 out of 10. Unfortunately, the Batmobile is gonna be a 5 out of 10. It works when executed well, but it's so shoved in your face that I hate it. If it was used sparsely, I wouldn't mind it at all, but because it's so in your face, it becomes really irritating. The overall score is gonna have to be a 6 out of 10. It works, but there isn't anything that's inherently bad. But after a while, you can get bored, especially how the Batmobile was implemented. In any event, we're on to the next segment, world design and music. Just a quick note, in the past I've criticized visual design and not level design. In Arkham Asylum, the level design was lacking, but the world design was impressive. In City it was done better, and in Origins it got even better, but the overworld was boring. So how does Arkham Knight compare? I've already expressed my feelings for the level design. I think Arkham Knight captures what it means to be Batman perfectly, with lots of ways to take people out. And this game gives you so many options I barely touched upon. Most of the world design is fantastic. It resembles a real city. I can imagine myself living it. There are so many moments where I would stop in my tracks and explore the city. It's very interesting in the way Rocksteady managed to create such a place. The game has what I was asking for in Origins, minus a few things, but generally this feels real. It's as if the team took the Batman animated series and recreated it in this game. It's amazing. Gotham's overworld is fantastic. It's the polar opposite of City, and the sheer volume of effort that went into making the city feel alive is astonishing. However, some of it can be a bit bland. While the world design is impressive, some of the places where you fight as Batman can be a bit boring. There are a lot of scenarios in this game with areas you visit or fight that have barely anything in them, but other times there's quite a bit going on. I get why Rocksteady did this, but the backdrops themselves are lacking compared to the other games. But what this game doesn't lack on is lots and lots of construction sites. So many of them in fact, that I was getting bored of looking at them. A lot of this game's combat takes place in either a construction site, outside some rooftop, or underground. Most, if not all the time, you will see dirt. And this is the biggest takeaway with combat. While the level design will provide ways to take enemies out, if the visual design is boring, I can't help but feel bummed out. Nothing in this game's overworld is really memorable. I can only recall a few places, and I kind of want something to take away. I can recall location in Asylum, City, and Origins, but Night not really. It's on the same level as Origins, just without weird level designs to keep it interesting. It's kinda bland. But the story for this game could have lended itself so well to the world level and visual designs. So as you know, Joker is in your mind. So what Rocksteady could have done is have levels change accordingly in the way Joker would want to see them. Take Amnesia: The Dark Descent for example. When your heart is racing, the level design will change accordingly. You'll start to see giant blood pimples and veins across the walls. Unfortunately, that's not present in this game. Instead, what we do get, while interesting, is not really impressive. I do enjoy the hallucinations that change certain billboards or some of the statues, but really outside from that, nothing in this game is super memorable. I wish we could have had more weird level designs or visual designs. In Arkham Asylum, the game changed from a 3D action RPG to a 2D platformer, and with very interesting visual designs combined with a weird level design. But none of that happens here and it sucks. The only memorable part of this game I can visualize is the part where the Arkham Knight is chasing you around, but for all the wrong reasons. It's fucking bland, like really bland. You're underground while he's chasing you and it's so boring. And I don't know why I remember this, but I do. In any case, something I found really irritating was some of the new faces and outfits. I get why Rocksteady changed them, but some of them look weird. Harley Quinn for example. They made her face more round and the eyes more squinty. It's like bad plastic surgery or when someone slim got fat but only the face changed. She's such an unimportant character in this game, but the face really annoyed me for days. I kept looking at her, trying to figure out what was wrong, what went different. Even now my only conclusion is the eyes and the shape of her face. Outside from her face, her outfit is gorgeous. It's a mix between Asylum and City. It looks really nice. The colors mix and stand out from the other villains. Too bad about the face though. Riddler looks a little weird, but I don't mind it. It works with the meta reasoning. Which is at this point, because he's already lost to Batman twice, he's desperate. And in Night, they clarified that he's suffering from an obsessive compulsive disorder. So his new look really works in that he'll do anything at this point to prove to the world how he's better than Batman. Although I don't get why his hair color changed. Catwoman this time around is a good fix. She used to look really old and almost doll-like, now they fleshed her out and made her look more real. Joker looks almost the exact same, just a little bit more fleshed out. I notice his eyes are more watery in this game compared to the others. He's honestly the best character in this game. He's got some of the best dialogue compared to everybody else. But by far one of the most drastic redesigns is Poison Ivy. She's almost an entirely different character. They made her more human, but in doing so they got rid of her dark green skin. And I'm not too sure how I feel about this. I appreciate the new design, but what makes Ivy stand out is her green skin, because it plays into her nature personality. When you make her more human, it makes me think she's trying to lose that history. Anyway, the Arkham Knight himself has a really cool design. It's a play on what I think a Batman copycat would look like. But I don't like that his outfit isn't completely armored. Instead, the militia outfit takes up the majority of it. It looks really ugly that we have a sleek armor design from the up top, but as you descend, it's this disgusting red and black cameo. If it was black and white, it'll still look ugly, but it'll look much better. But goddamn, we have to talk about Scarecrow. Boy, I love everything new about him. You can see he's a completely loose edge. His face is all torn but fixed by surgery. His original mask looks like it's still on his face, but stitched over the loose skin he has left. His eyes are pale white with glimpses of his pupils. His mouth is ripped apart from Croc tearing into him during Asylum, and his new voice really fits this version so much.
You die here, and your legend dies with you.
On top of that, his theme is executed so well, which in turn brings me to the music for Night. It sounds like a combination of Asylum and City while incorporating themes of hope and despair. This really works as it's Batman's last journey with Rocksteady. However, something about the programming with the music is a bit off. Most of the time when I'm in combat there's no music, it's just silent. This would be fine if I was exploring the city, but when I'm doing something like combat I expect some form of music. Regardless of that, we're at the last bit, the story. Before I get into the story, WB created a series of comic books bridging the gap between City and Night, but you don't need to read those, they're pretty bad from what I've read. There are events in the book that are never brought up in the game. Instead, I want to talk about City's DLC. I forgot to mention it during City's review, so I'll quickly do it here. I love it, it's short, it's sweet, this should have been the continuity for Night, and how it could have concluded. Robin was a treat to play as, he was fun, the level design is creepy yet beautiful with graffiti all over the place with so much story just being told along the walls. Also, just a quick heads up, if you don't know who the Arkham Knight is, or you do, I want to see the story somehow done better, I honestly recommend watching, a major spoiler here, so big spoiler, the movie Under the Red Hood. It's honestly fantastic. With that out of the way, the Arkham Knight begins with Joker's body being cremated, with Commissioner Gordon narrating the story how the Batman died. The game starts with a first-person view with the player entering a cafe controlling a police officer. A civilian tells you someone's been smoking inside. When you go to inspect the smoking, the unknown assailant had just infected the entirety of the cafe with fear gas. The people inside are going mad. Scarecrow makes a sudden reappearance and tells the people of Gotham this was only 5% of the new fear toxin, and they have till tomorrow to leave if they do not wish to get infected themselves. Massive evacuation occurs throughout the city, with villains like Penguin and Two-Face teaming up. Commissioner Gordon and Batman get together. Gordon mentions he had a lead on a military-grade vehicle that had just entered Gotham but was shortly lost. With the conversation over, Batman disappears and Gordon gets word that a police officer is down. Batman overhears the call and goes to check it out with the help of Oracle, who tracks it down. After saving the police officer, a militia vehicle comes speeding through. Batman calls in the Batmobile and destroys the vehicle, where he goes to interrogate the soldier about Scarecrow's whereabouts. The soldier tries to attack Batman with fear gas, but Batman breaks his arm and then proceeds to ask again. The soldier, overcome with fear, tells Batman Scarecrow is doing something in Chinatown's penthouse. After the interrogation, Batman has Oracle do a chemical analysis on the fear gas. Heading to the penthouse, Poison Ivy is held captive by malicious soldiers. Scarecrow remotely uses his toxin, but it has no effect on her, knocking out the soldier. She informs Batman that a few villains have teamed up in order to kill him, and when she refused to work with them, they locked her up. Batman takes Ivy back to the GCPD to keep her safe. Oracle tries to find Scarecrow's location but needs Batman to activate a certain radio tower. When he arrives, he acquires his new batsuit and activates the tower. Oracle locates Scarecrow's broadcast, where she informs Batman he's at Ace Chemicals. Batman proceeds to head there as Commissioner Gordon is waiting for him to arrive. Gordon informs him some of the Ace Chemical workers are still inside but have gone radio silent. Analyzing the area, Batman visibly notices that an army has resided here. Sneaking around, he finds a few of the workers topside, but they're all dead besides one of them. Rescuing him, the Arkham Knight swoops down, traps Batman and tells him his men about Batman's weak points. But he shortly flees the scene as Batman uses the Batmobile remotely. This sets up a very interesting dynamic as to who he could be and how does he know about Batman's strengths and weaknesses. Anyway, looking for more Ace Chemical workers, Oracle calls Batman and asks why can't Robin help with his mission. Batman responds with that he's working on something more important right now and needs to focus on that. Heading down into the Ace Chemical building, he finds another key worker. Taking him topside, we're now introduced to the first boss fight, the Arkham Knight himself controlling a remote helicopter. This fight is so laughable, it's insane. I can't even consider it a fight. I forgot everything about it until I went back to review the footage. It's so stupid. After you destroy it, Batman delivers the workers to Gordon, who takes them back to the GCPD. Batman heads after Scarecrow once again. Oracle calls in and tells Bruce that a fear toxin during the beginning of the game was deployed to have Gotham isolated so Scarecrow could overtake the Ace Chemical plant, which should be used to create the largest fear toxin known to Gotham, and it doesn't matter if the citizens have gotten out, the blast radius will be huge. Batman finds Scarecrow, and as he approaches him, Scarecrow gives himself up. Batman slams his head into a machine and demands to know how to stop the toxin from getting out. But Scarecrow, calm in his endeavor, threatens him by exclaiming Barbara's in danger. Bruce quickly calls up, but when he does, Scarecrow gets away, locking Batman inside the room. Oracle gets kidnapped and the room starts to fill in with fear toxin. Alfred urges Bruce to get out or he dies, but that will mean the whole of Gotham getting infected, so it's Batman's duty to try and reduce the radius as much as possible. Batman manages to stop the fear toxin from getting out, but the blast radius is reduced to only the Ace Chemical Building. Batman, now infected, sees his greatest fear: the Joker. The game alternates to a sunny morning of Gotham where we are now controlling Commissioner Gordon. He goes through the Peninsula movie studios where he finds 4 inmates. 3 of them are Joker lookalikes, with one of them being a regular citizen. Batman confronts Jim and tells him that the people here are in fact infected with Joker's blood. It seems that some of the blood had gone unmarked and had infused with them, transforming them into different personas of the Joker. Besides Henry, who isn't infected while also being the longest who had been exposed. Batman insists Henry is a cure, so he needs him to stay here until he can find one. Gordon asks what about the final cell, and Batman simply tells him he'll be here soon. Foreshadowing is for Batman. But I don't get this scene. I understand that Batman's the one who will be in the cell because of the events during Arkham City, but during Arkham City he got cured thanks to Mr. Freeze. And it can't be that he's infected because this scene takes place in the past before Scarecrow's attack. So I don't get what he means by he's the 4th Joker. I'm very confused with this scene because why would he need to be in a cell if he's already cured? And can we talk about how really stupid this concept of multiple Jokers are? And I'm not even talking about a real story that's in the comic books right now. The concept is cool, but what makes Joker is that he's all 4 of these things combined. The game never explains why, or should I say how, they're able to take Joker's personality. This game really tries to retcon City because it never once explains why the inmates are able to survive when getting infused with Joker's blood. And how is it when Batman took the blood directly from Joker he was gonna die? The two parallel and the game never tells you why or how. This plotline feels forced. I don't see the reason to include it at all. There's already so much in the game's story. Including this feels like filler. We moved on from Joker, yet Rocksteady wants us to bring us back to him, but we need to move on. In the overall story, you can remove this plotline and nothing will be that different. And before we get back to being Batman again, I need to talk about that garbage scene. So Batman went after Scarecrow without any protection. Why is he a dumbass? No, seriously, really consider that. During the beginning of the game, we see a few people getting infected with the fear toxin, so we know Scarecrow isn't bluffing. When Batman saves Ivy, it's shown that she's immune to his toxin, so why not have her make a cure? Like, I know she's a villain and all, but she's shown she's willing to do deals and has done so. All he has to do is ask her and give her something back in return. But overall, this is just dumb. Batman goes after Scarecrow with no protection, and before someone says something like, the game tells you that a gas can go through anything, you're right. But still, it's like Batman didn't learn anything from Arkham Asylum. I can get behind he was going to get infected no matter what, but why would he let Scarecrow out of his sight? How incredibly stupid do you have to be in order to let someone like that just get away? Why did Batman use his pointless FaceTime thing to talk to Oracle when the earphone works just as well? All it did was let him escape. Most if not all the problems that occur throughout the story can be traced back to this one moment. I want you to keep that in mind. So with that in mind, the game transfers us back to the present day with Joker looking down at Batman, warning him to get out. Batman springs up and has to leave the Ace Chemical Building before it completely collapses. As it does, Bruce calls Alfred and tells him he managed to survive but has been exposed to the fear toxin. He then calls Gordon to tell him he needs to speak face to face. When they meet, Batman tells him that Scarecrow managed to capture Barbara. Gordon, nothing irrationally, leaves and tries to find her with Batman following behind. Batman manages to escort Gordon to the clock tower, the last location where Barbara was. Upon arriving, it's overrun with militia soldiers. Batman takes them out and uses the hidden entrance to enter the building while Gordon uses the elevator. As Batman swoops in, he sees Barbara reading a book, but it's soon made well known that this is a flashback. A younger Joker comes in and shoots Barbara's spine, to then Joker starts taking photos of her. An iconic moment for Barbara's history, but also a statement for one of Batman's many failures. As the camera turns, we are taken back to the clock tower. Joker starts teasing Bruce with how he's gonna break it to Gordon. As he shows up, Batman unveils that she's been working with him for a long time. Out of sheer disgust, Gordon strikes Batman and leaves trying to find his daughter. Batman tries to find any leads on where she could be. He watches the CCTV cameras and soon enough finds that the Arkham Knight broke in and took her away. He calibrates the back car to track his last location, and as it does, the trail continues through the tunnels. From here, Batman tries to find a Knight on Barbara's whereabouts. Tim calls Bruce to find out how Barbara is doing, with Bruce lying to him, stating she's fine. Batman deep into the tunnel finds a militia outpost where they're making weapons and assembling vehicles. Batman tries to open the gates so he can destroy them with a bat tank. Unfortunately, the Arkham Knight knew where he was gonna be, so when Batman tries to lower the eastern gate, the Arkham Knight ambushes him, shoots him in the abdomen, and then could have shot him in the mouth. He instead leaves, and I really have no idea why. He uses the typical, haha, I'm better than you, so I'll let you live trope. It's pretty stupid for that to happen, considering with what happens later in the story. Batman heals himself and chases after the Knight. Destroying the vehicle he's in, he's nowhere to be found. Instead, the driver of the vehicle was using a voice synthesizer to match the Arkham Knight's voice. Now, the next part I'm going to talk about is a bit weird, and I'm not too sure how I'm supposed to talk about this or why Rocksteady did this, so some of the side quests are part of the main story. I wouldn't have a problem with it if it makes sense, but in this case it really doesn't. I'll talk about this more in the end, but it's very strange. Anyway, Batman goes after Penguin with the help of Nightwing, who's here because Penguin had his men inside Bloodhaven. Now the two are here to stop him and his illegal activities. Once captured, Batman forces Penguin to answer where Barbara and the Arkham Knight are. Penguin spews out they're probably somewhere with Simon Stagg. Penguin gets away and Batman destroys his money vault. Alfred tells Bruce Simon Stagg is the CEO and pharmaceutical specialist who Scarecrow is going after right now. With this information, Batman heads towards Stagg's airship. But before then, Batman, buddy, you wanna go after Ivy? She's still at the GCPD. We can go ask her to create a cure or something, bud. You wanna do that? No. Okay. On board the ship is infested with militia goons who kill doctors and scientists. Alfred urges Bruce to take care of Scarecrow first before anything else happens. Bruce argues that he's not gonna let anyone else close to him die. Approaching Stagg, he's been apprehended by some goons. Saving him, Batman questions why they're after him and what do they want. Stagg answers he doesn't know, and so Batman asks where Barbara is. To then Simon Stagg disappears and Joker takes his place. The grunts Batman took care of start to get up and transform into Joker, who then just laugh and laugh until they start to choke Batman out. But by sheer willpower, Batman wakes up to find Simon was taken away to the other airship. Batman needs to find a way onto the other airship safely without being detected, so he goes after Stagg's personal computer. Finding it, he can't access it without a clean set of Stagg's fingerprints. Thankfully, the CCTV camera are unlocked, so watching it, Batman calibrates all the places where Stagg had been. Locating all the places where Stagg placed his fingerprints on, Batman recreates his fingerprints and has access to the other airship. When on board the other airship, Batman finds horrific experiments that were conducted on live patients. Listening to the audio tape, Stagg was working for Scarecrow while also double-crossing him by trying to recreate the fear gas himself to sell to investors. Stagg mentions something called Cloudburst with each patient, to which Batman gives Alfred full remote access to Stagg's personal computer to search for. Moving ahead, Batman finds Stagg again, but this time locked up in a cage. Talking to him, he still believes Batman to not know what he's been doing, so he continues to lie. Scarecrow starts pumping the cell with fear gas with Batman knocking Stagg out. Batman finds Scarecrow, but when he enters the room he finds two Scarecrows, one on the left and one on the right. Who's the real one? Regardless of what you pick, it will always be wrong. Scarecrow successfully tricking Batman, releases more fear gas towards his face. Batman crumbles before Scarecrow where he taunts him for his failure and how he's gonna enjoy watching Gotham burn. Bruce's eyes open with a shot of green, his voice becomes distorted and now Joker has control. The militia who are tasked to take him out are instead begging for their lives. Scarecrow, astonished, tries to take a closer look but instead gets overthrown with Joker provoking Bruce to cross the line, stating Scarecrow is no better than the person who killed his parents. And with that, Bruce takes a shot, killing Scarecrow. Batman falls to his knees, realizing what he's just done, but it's made clear that this was the effect of the fear toxin, and Scarecrow comments on how Batman has changed. Scarecrow makes a joke and leaves via flying with this giant thing. I'm not too sure. Batman tries to go after him, but the Arkham Knight stops him in his tracks. Soon after, Batman gets a message about Barbara's location. She's at Chinatown's penthouse. Losing no time, he rushes over there, but by the time he arrives, she's already dead. Or at least that's what Scarecrow wants us to think. Instead, he lets out some more fear gas to where Barbara actually kills herself. Alfred finds out what happened and tells Bruce that the people of Gotham still need him. Bruce tells Alfred to locate the Cloudburst. And would you look at that, we did it, boys! Batman's finally had the revelation. Ivy's immune, so he's gonna make sure she helps. When at the GCPD, what does Batman do in order to get Ivy to help? Nothing. He just tells her Scarecrow's new toxin will kill all plants in Gotham, and with that, she agrees to help. With her support, Batman asks Ivy how she's immune. She says she's created a cure to counter the fear toxin with spores at a molecular level. Batman next inquires if she could create one for the whole city. She states that creating one would be hard without help, so the two venture out to the Botanical Gardens where the oldest plant of Gotham resides. Where there, Ivy confesses the plant she's after is far too weak to create a cure as a result of pollution and lack of sunlight. Batman proposes a plan. If he's able to locate the root for the plant, could she fully grow it? Ivy, stunned by Batman's nobility, essentially tells him that could work. Batman goes ahead and uses the Batmobile sensor to locate it. With each sensor blast, he gets closer to finding it. When he does, he manages to break it free with the militia then trying to kill it. Batman stops them and Ivy fully matures the plant to neutralize the cloudburst. Alfred calls in and tells Bruce he couldn't find the cloudburst, but instead Bruce tells him to run a full analysis on the Knight's forces and send it to the movie studio's computer. When at the movie studios, Alfred informs Bruce he's gonna have to tell Tim about Barbara, to where Bruce informs him that's not gonna happen. The two get into a mild debate whether or not that's the right approach, but Bruce insists that Robin needs to be in the right mindset in order to work on the cure for the Joker mutants. As he picks up the data, Alfred informs Bruce that the long-range scanners could not locate a cloudburst and using the Batwing could be dangerous because the radio tower is connected to a missile launcher. When the call ends, Tim questions about Barbara's whereabouts, to where Bruce insists she's fine and that he needs to focus on the cure. Batman heads over to the towers and analyzes the missile. It's protected by a shield, so he has to hack into the control panel to disable it, and then needs to bring in the Bat Tank to destroy it. But as he's disabling the shields, the Arkham Knight breaks in. Batman, knowing this would happen, uses the element of surprise as he hides right above his nose, and when he drops down, the two get into a scuffle, but not even a real fight. It's like two kids in the playground fighting over something stupid, and then the Knight just leaves for no reason. Batman then brings in the Batmobile to destroy the missile. When he does, he heads over to the clock tower to try and find the cloudburst himself, but even with the radio tower gone, the cloudburst is still hidden. Alfred informs Bruce he's getting an emergency call from Henry, who tells Batman Harley and the men have tried to break in and that Robin's in trouble. During the middle of the call, Harley whacks Henry in the head and brings up Joker's death, but begrudgingly accepts the new Jokers for herself. Batman in a hurry hastens over to the movie studios, and when he arrives, he tries to enter the building, but finds that Harley has somehow managed to overwrite the security voice panel. Rewriting it, he enters the building to find Robin was fending off on his own. Helping him out, they check the Batcomputer to find out where the inmates ran off to. The cameras show each of them in separate areas, with Harley placing her men with them. Batman and Robin go after them, with Christina Bell first. She's the obsessive side of Joker, where he would want Batman for himself and no one else can have him. She resides in a horror place set with lots of big theatrical sets and spookiness. Taking the grunts out, they capture her pretty easily. Robin takes Christina back to her cell, with Batman going after the second Joker, Johnny Charisma, the persona who loves the theatrics. But before Batman goes after him, he gets a vivid memory of Joker torturing Jason, beating him with a crowbar, and destroying his persona. But as the vision is at an end, Tim comes in and sets Bruce back to reality, where they go after Johnny. When they go see Johnny, he's gotten ready for a big musical number with 5 bombs around the stage while wearing a bomb on his chest. Robin takes care of the bombs, but Johnny gets replaced as the Joker and has a pretty catchy musical number. Even Robin doesn't want it to end. But when they do, Robin takes Johnny back to his cell, and Batman once again gets a vivid flashback continuing Jason Todd's torture. When the flashback is over, Bruce is still spooked, but he and Tim still go after Albert King, the Joker who loves power and fighting. But he's more closely related to the Titan Joker in my honest opinion. He's the only person in the game who's a boss fight. It might not be a real boss fight, but he has extended life bar, so technically he is. Henry calls and tells Batman Harley's trying to break back into the quarantine room. Batman goes over there to take care of Harley, with Robin distracting her. The two capture Harley and take her back with them. Batman and Robin take Harley and Albert King back to the quarantine chambers. But when they get there, the other Jokers have been killed by none other than Henry, the 4th Joker, the one who loves the pragmatic surprise. He was the one who was pulling all the strings and somehow overrid the system. He tells Batman to join Robin unless he wants Harley to die. Henry kills Albert King, then points a gun at Batman. But as he does, the fear gas changes Bruce's eyes. Noticing this, Henry kills himself, with Robin noticing the change as well. Robin tells Bruce he needs to be in a cell now before it's too late. Bruce agrees and proceeds to get in a cell chamber. But as Bruce enters it, Alfred tells him the Arkham Knight has found his location and has sent an army to destroy him. Robin goes ahead to take them out, with Joker continuing with the Jason Todd story, where he finally kills Jason. But the whole ordeal of Batman getting in a cell was all a fragment of his disillusion explosion. Robin's still standing by the cell waiting for Bruce to get in, but when he's about to go in, Bruce counters Tim and throws him inside instead. Bruce cuts Tim's communication with Alfred. Alfred then calls in to ask how Tim's doing, with Bruce stating he's fine. And in the optional cutscene, you can tell Tim about Barbara. It's pretty emotional. Bruce heads out with Alfred, telling him there's lots of seismic activity happening near the botanical garden. When Batman goes to check it out, it's the Arkham Knight's forces. Ivy decides to take them out, but in doing so she gives away her location. She tells Batman the Knight will be sending something big soon, and that she won't be able to help him right now for she's far too weak. Batman then goes to visit Ivy to convince her to go back to the GCPD in order to keep her safe. But in the midst of the conversation, Alfred reports something with large amounts of energy is coming through Pioneer's Bridge. As Batman's taking a glance at the bridge, a huge explosion spreads throughout all of Gotham. It seems the Arkham Knight is searching for Batman while trying to kill Ivy with the cloudburst. Batman tells Ivy they need to get out of here, otherwise she will die. But she ignores him, exclaiming if they don't stop the cloudburst now, both of them will. Batman decides to go after Stag, knowing he created the cloudburst, so he'll know how to stop it. When he gets back to the airship, he notices Stag somehow got out of his cell. Locating him, Batman threatens him unless he can tell him how to stop it. Stag goes into detail how to stop the cloudburst. He says it's surrounded by a Nimbus field. Any vehicle not using a Nimbus cell will be fried, as the field helps spread the toxin and boosts it. Batman takes one of the cells and brings it back with him, but he has to go into the cloudburst and switch out a Batcar's power drive. Alfred tells him it's far too dangerous, but Bruce argues he has to take the risk. He jumps in and it's a very slow job. He tries to hold his breath as best as he can, but eventually breathes in some of the toxin. He imagines the criminals around him transforming into Jokers. Batman starts to break down, but as he pushes himself, he manages to get the cell inside and crawls his way into the Batmobile. He calls Ivy to tell her to get rid of as much gas as she can so he can find the cloudburst, but she can't. Her plants are far too weak. So he requests to know where he can find another. She tells him there's one buried beneath Founders Island, so that's where he goes. But the plant is buried so far below, he has to go underground. Once there, he finds it quite easily. Using the scanner, he again manages to break it free. The plant grows huge and Ivy takes Batman back to the surface. More militia come and try to take the plant out, but Batman stops them, and as he does, the Arkham Knight calls him out and wants to fight him. He sends out more tanks. Yay! When Batman destroys them, a boss fight occurs with the Knight, and it's not a very good one again. In order to destroy it, he has to neutralize it, so he has to shoot all four sides without being detected. When he shoots even one side of the vehicle the Knight's in, it somehow gains extraordinary speed. It goes from 0 to 100 instantly. You can drive to wherever you want, but this thing will somehow manage to keep up its speed. It's such bullshit. How is it keeping up with the Batcar? It's so big. Besides the vehicle gaining speed, it's also in its combat stage, so when you're trying to get away from it, the Knight's trying to hit you with explosive rounds that take quite a bit of health away. When you penetrate all four sides, you then have to fight the Knight head on, but once again with the tank. Yay, more tank fights. Woohoo. Destroying the tank, the Knight tries to get out but is overwhelmed. Batman saves him, but no thank you was given besides a weak chokehold. Batman turns a Uno reverse card and starts wailing at him. The Knight, who I presumably think was there, managed to get away once Batman started to hallucinate the Joker. He then calls Ivy to tell her she can now get rid of the cloudburst. Unfortunately, no response was given. He goes to check up on her, but he finds her wasting away. Seeing Batman, she gives it her all. In her final act of goodwill, she saves Gotham but sacrifices herself with her final words,
Nature always wins.
Her body decomposes and withers away all throughout Gotham. The cloudburst is no more. Alfred calls and congratulates him and Ivy. He then tells Bruce the GCPD got something that might lead them to Scarecrow. When he is there, he listens to a broadcast Gordon sent out requesting for help. It seems he's found Scarecrow and is going to try and kill him. Tracking Gordon, the Knight finds Batman and wants to fight him again. And it's quite mediocre, like honestly. All you're really doing is trying to get the Knight's attention to chase you around when you drive past explosive barrels. He'll get stuck by them and you win. That's it. Also, that's what you think. Eventually, the Knight has Batman trapped where he destroys the Batmobile, but Batman manages to find an exit and finds Gordon. Still captured, Batman saves him, and wouldn't you know it, it's the Knight again. But this time, he's gonna show us who he is. And oh my god, I can't believe it's Jason. Who could have predicted that? It's not like the game was alluding to anything. I'm so surprised. He then decides to be even more angsty and removes the bat face mask thing and is now the Red Hood. The boss fight against Jason is shit. What even is this? I don't know. Can you consider it a fight? I'm not even too sure. It's that bad. As Batman, you have to sneak under Jason, then grapple towards him for about 4 times to end the fight. But with each time you're near him, he sends out grunts to fight you. But it's so easy, I don't know what Rocksteady was thinking. Who the hell thought this was a good idea? Honestly, what a shit character, what a shit reveal. And everything Rocksteady said about the night before was a lie. I can understand why they want to bring Jason to the games, but not like this. His whole character was, I'm gonna get you, Batman. I can't believe you destroyed my tanks. Scarecrow, help me. I don't know what that was. But that's his character. He complains, he whines too much. The 4 big issues with Jason is that his whole story has been done before. Rocksteady for some reason lacked imagination and they wanted to show it off again. The second issue is there's no big twist. Everything is the exact same. Nothing major changed. Sure, this time he didn't die, but then it begs the question, what the hell was he doing all that time? Plus, if he truly wanted to kill Bruce, he would have done so when he ambushed him. The third issue, the reveal. When the game started to show Jason, you already know who the Knight is, and the game thinks you're stupid by going, oh my god, I wonder who the Knight is. It can't be Jason cause he's dead, oh no. This shit is so forced, you had to be a little thick to not know who the Knight was. It's also due to the fact that Jason had no presence in the previous games, so when they started showing off who he is, it came off as forced. The 4th issue, Rocksteady lied. Now, I can get behind a few lies if you're trying to stir up a little narrative away so players will be a bit surprised when said thing happens, but Rocksteady straight up lied their way through this game. Throughout multiple interviews and such, they explicitly said the Arkham Knight is a new character. They created and collabed with DC themselves, so of course fans were ecstatic. So when they showed off who he is, what a shit show. If they were to give his identity away early on, then have Bruce try to get Jason to change his ways, it could have been interesting. Or I don't know, maybe have anybody else be the Knight. Huh? What a thought. The fact is they lied. Now you can argue the Knight is a new character in a way. However, because most of his changes aren't different, it's not really. If you compare pre-crisis Jason to post-crisis Jason, then yeah, I can see a point. But here, no way. Anyway, back to the game. After you beat Jason, he cries a bit more. Bruce tries to help him, but before he can, Jason leaves. Alfred's shocked. Batman helps Gordon, they both make amends and connect during the elevator ride. Gordon even finds out from the fight Bruce is Batman. When they reach the top of the elevator, Scarecrow is waiting for them to arrive. Gordon pulls his gun on him, but when they get closer, Gordon unveils he was working for Scarecrow because Barbara is alive, oh my god! Gordon shoots Batman in the chest. Scarecrow, annoyed by this, throws Oracle off the building, but Bruce saves her. He explains Gordon knew what he was doing and they get into a new Batcar. He then takes her back to the GCPD where he brings her to one of the workstations where she figures she can find Scarecrow's location. She relates to Batman she's having a tough time narrowing his last location, but in the midst of the conversation, Scarecrow announces he has most of his men and artillery to attack the GCPD building. With the help of Oracle, Batman takes them all out. Abruptly, she gets a lead on where Scarecrow is. She tells Batman to go check out the movie studios. When he gets there, there's no sign of Scarecrow or Tim around, aside from Scarecrow's sweet tagging skills. Scarecrow shortly calls Batman, informing him he's still a failure and if he wants to commission and Robin alive, he best follow his arrangement. Go to Kingston Depot alone, take off the utility belt and get in the truck to reveal who he is. Bruce, willing to make that sacrifice, goes through with Scarecrow's deal and finds himself in the truck. Alone for hours, no one knows where he is or where he's going. Alfred reports someone's tracking them, and sure enough, a vehicle comes through and crashes into them. Batman gets out with the truck now engulfed in flames. Examining where he is, he finds himself in Crime Alley, where he starts mourning his parents' death. But Joker shows up to try to take over Batman. The two duke it out, but while they're fighting, the toxin is getting worse. Batman's not holding it back anymore. He gets behind Joker and breaks his neck, destroying his one rule. Bruce suddenly wakes up and finds himself still in the truck, being taken to who knows where. The game has a very cute cutscene referencing Arkham Asylum's intro, where it shows the truck going to Arkham Asylum. When he is here, he's strapped up and taken away. He notices Robin and Gordon nearby. Scarecrow, live on TV, tells Gordon to take off Batman's mask. He refuses to do it. Scarecrow, offended, shoots Robin, twisting Gordon's hand. Batman proclaims to Gordon this is the end. Gotham with anticipation watches Gordon take off the mask. News stations all around Gotham watch with pure disbelief. Bruce Wayne is Batman. Scarecrow comes to the conclusion showing Bruce Wayne isn't enough. He needs to break him. He injects him with fear toxin and watches as Bruce is in agony. The game shifts to a new location with the other villains discussing as to how they should dispose of him. But it's no longer Bruce. Joker has taken over. When he wakes, he summons the Joker veil. Every grunt starts panicking. Mass destruction occurs, leaving everything in Joker's wake dead. He goes ahead to take care of the other villains, and sure enough he does. The Penguin, the Riddler, and Two-Face all die, and once outside, we see the mass destruction of Gotham, all of it burnt down. Throughout the playtime, a weird noise is being heard. Alfred is trying to reach Bruce, but Joker has completely taken over. Relishing in what has become, Bruce's Joker wakes up to find himself still confined by the stretcher. Scarecrow continues to intimidate Bruce, but all that occurs is laughter from a madman. Scarecrow, spooked, injects Joker with even more toxin, but this only strengthens Batman. The world around Joker fades into darkness. He turns on his flashlight to find himself somewhere else. The painting of his death is what he first sees, but as he continues walking down, all he sees is what life is like without him. The grave he once used to think about is destroyed. His funeral is completely empty. Harley, mourning his death, completely ignores him. Listening to an audio tape, Gotham has completely forgotten about him. Shouting, screaming, he fights to be remembered, but all that exceeds is finding himself shooting hundreds of Batman statues as they engulf him. Petrified, he finds himself elsewhere. Panicking, he calls in a holding cell, but when he does, Batman's voice is in his head. When the cell arrives, Batman breaks out, forcing Joker to submit to the one fear he has the most, to fade into obscurity. He opens fires ferociously at any endeavor to survive, but as the darkness looms over, he too is forced to go where he belongs. Shrieking, he begs and pleads to be remembered, but all that remains is Batman. Bruce wakes up no longer affected by the toxin. He manages to resist another dose of it. Scarecrow's only rational thought is to kill Bruce. He points a gun over his head and almost pulls the trigger, but a stray bullet shoots the gun out of his hand, and lo and behold, the Red Hood has decided to help. Let us say it like that. So yeah, the Red Hood has decided to help. He shoots the locks that resist Bruce, with Scarecrow trying to inject another dose in him, but he's captured and force-fed his own medicine to finally end tonight's nightmare. Leaving him to his fears, Bruce and Gordon have a moment to speak, with Bruce mentioning Gordon was at the beginning, and now he gets to witness the end. Not before Batman takes Scarecrow back to the GCPD. With the whole world knowing who Batman is, Bruce commands Alfred to activate Nightfall. With one last glance of Gotham City, Bruce heads over to Wayne Manor with hundreds of people watching him as he enters inside. But unbeknownst to all of them, a huge explosion has occurred, presumptuously killing Bruce and Alfred. Gotham watches in horror as the Protector had just died. And that's Batman Arkham Knight. There is one last ending, a secret ending, where you have to collect all Riddler trophies, and I don't care for that at all, so I decided to download it. It doesn't really add much outside of a new Batman who uses fear gas, and that's it, the end. With that, the score of the story is gonna be at least a 5 out of 10. It's not horrible, but it's not good. The story kinda sucks, with it tripping all over itself. It tries to be something new but never taking any risks. Sure, there's a few awesome scenes like when Batman says his iconic line, but stuff like when Batman goes after Scarecrow when Ivy was right there, or how the Joker's blood turns you into him is never explained and comes off as short-sighted. It's fine when you're not thinking about certain plot points, but when you do, it becomes clear how ludicrous the story is compared to the previous games. It tries to one-up City but fails in every aspect. The moment you think about certain scenes, you realize how dumb the story can get. For example, a very cool scene is when Jason helps Batman, but when you think about it, you have to start questioning why. Like, how and why did Jason decide to help Bruce? There's nothing in the story to imply that he had a change of heart. The last time we saw him was when Bruce reached out to him. Was this what made him rethink? But then why was there so much hatred? If that's all he needed, why not attack Bruce head on? Maybe a year ago before Asylum or during City. He went from 0 to 100 quickly, and then again fell down to 0. Or maybe 50, because he kinda just disappears after he helps you. Additionally, what took him so long? We know he was following Bruce when he was in the truck, so he would have been following him back to the asylum. Not only that, but if he and Scarecrow were working together, he would know where he would end up. So why is it that he got there so late? These types of questions are never answered. Like, why was Barbara even in Gotham? She should have been at Wayne Manor assisting Alfred, away from everyone else. Clearly the tower wasn't the safest place, and it's shown that she can work elsewhere, so there was no reason for her to be in the tower at all. These kind of plot holes where it's blatantly obvious is what makes me dislike this game's story. I could get behind it if it's stated in the game what these characters were thinking or doing at the time, but it never does. Instead, it tries to fill plot holes with bad decisions. And it doesn't even fill the plot holes, it just makes new plot holes. It doesn't answer anything, but it does ask questions, and I can get behind that if that's the intention, but I highly doubt it. And the DLC could have fixed those problems, but that's shit. The DLC for this game is absolutely disgusting and you should stay away from them. All they provide is 10 minutes of enjoyment with 2 missions with each character. If the price was fine, I would say get it, but usually they aren't. Overall, the game is fine, there's nothing huge to boast about, it's stuffed to the brim with new awesome features as Batman, but you barely play as Batman, so it comes off as presumptuous. The story kinda sucks, but it does have really cool moments, the gameplay is at least tight and responsive, so it's fun, but as Batman, the game is probably the worst main entry. For me, it goes City, Asylum, Origins, Night.
So we both die. I'm fine with that.
Just a quick new little segment I want to try out. Don't know if it's gonna be any good. New segment that shit don't make sense, aka nitpicks. Even though nitpicks exist in the video, this is even more nitpicks. And what's even more nitpicks? Well, Robin's ages, the ages of the characters. Robin's age, Batman's age, Barbara's age, Tim Barbara's relationship. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So in the game, Dick and Barbara should be in a relationship, right? Because they're around the same age. Barbara's about 27 and Tim's about 20. That's a 7-year gap. And Dick is probably about 25. And then in Origins, you have Barbara who was 15, and this game takes 10 years ahead of Origins, so she would be 25. So then Dick would be 22, and then Tim would be 17. What? None of this makes sense. Hold on, wait a minute. What? Then how old is Bruce? Oh my days, what's going on? Oh, I'm going insane. None of this makes sense. What is happening? Okay, so the issue I have is if you break it down, it really doesn't make any sense. Rocksteady and WB Montreal, I feel like, messed up the timeline due to the ages of the characters. Just to give some context, in the Batgirl DLC, she's with Tim, and it's implied they're dating or seeing each other, but at that moment, that would mean she's dating a minor, unless the timeline for the Arkham games are heavily different. In Origins, Barbara is 15, so she would be Batgirl around 16 or 17, but then Bruce would have to adopt Dick at some point if we're following the pre-crisis timeline. He would have adopted him at age 8 where his parents died. That means at age 10 he became Robin and Nightwing at 22. So then why wasn't he mentioned during Origins? Then we have Jason, who was adopted at age 12 and Tim left the role of Robin, giving the mantle to Jason. So he would have to grow up and die around age 16 or 17, and then Tim's around 2 years older than Jason, so Barbara is dating a minor, or was. This whole thing is a mess when you really break it down. I feel like when WB Montreal gave a time frame for when the events took place, that really screwed up the timeline. But also when Rocksteady had Tim date Barbara, because Rocksteady fed on the whole everything is accurate to the comic books, but then all of a sudden this one event isn't accurate to the comic books at all. Every other adaptation has Dick date Barbara and not Tim. It's really weird when for some reason Rocksteady was like, let's just change it up a bit, let's just a little bit. It's like, that doesn't make much sense now, doesn't it? Wouldn't it be better for if Nightwing or technically Dick to be dating Barbara? But no, instead we having Tim date Barbara, which doesn't really make any sense. God damn it. It's funny, the backstory for the characters are just as complicated as their comic book counterparts, but I actually do hope one day they manage to fix this, or if not, keep moving forward and create better stories, because the Arkham Knight sure wasn't. The Arkham Knight seemed to jam-pack too many things into the story. That's like my one major issue with it. Like City also had like that issue, but City overall was just fun. This story just felt drab. just felt so unoriginal. Anyway, and before I forget, I mentioned how Nightwing being in the game's campaign is weird. That's because it is. So in the game, if you're only playing the story, then at some point you run into Nightwing, but he's never mentioned again until you do that side quest where at the end he leaves and is never brought back because Bruce said to go away. But my issue with this is, don't include a character like that in the main story where at the end it's implied someone's coming to help you but isn't that person who you were thinking of due to a side quest. If anything, it just feels like a cop-out. Like you have this character that could save the end, but wasn't there to save the end because Bruce told him to go away. It makes sense for that to happen, but it just feels like a really cheap ending. Especially when the character was in the main story. If it was just regulated to a side quest, I can understand, but this game included Nightwing in the main story, so he's part of the main story. And he would have saved Bruce at the end without having him to give out his identity in some way, in some form or fashion. He still had his old costume, so he could have just worn that. It's a pretty cheap ending, and if anything, if they really wanted to, Superman could have came and saved them all, because he is mentioned in the game. In any case, that's it for me. Take care, do all the YouTube things if you like. You know, like, what do you do? Like, subscribe, share. Do you share anymore? Does anyone share anymore? I don't know. Share if you want to. Don't share if you don't want to. I don't care. Anyway, that's it for me. Take care. See ya. Ah, that's gross. I don't know if that picked up the train, but I'll have to read it once more. Sunday's a good time to read it because Sundays I don't think there's a lot of trains. 1 rice, 2 rice, 3 rice. Additionally, the combat has been given environmental takedowns, so when you're close to certain subsets. Additionally, the certain combat has been given takedowns, so you're close to object people. I'm losing it, dude. It's 5:46. I started when it was 4:50, and I barely got through it. Highlighted blue. This will let you take that. Grunts themselves are far more varied this time around. Well, to an extent. They can now tackle Batman and they can revive their own guys. Grunts themselves are far more varied this time around. Well, to an extent, they have one new ability where they can tackle Batman. I was about to get ready to read, but I can hear that train. I can hear it coming. And connect during the elevator ride. Gordon even finds out from the fight Batman is Bruce Wayne. It's a neat little detail. They even discuss how they met for the first time in Arkham Knight. In Arkham City. Arkham Asylum, I mean. Jeez. Go through all the games. What about Arkham Origins? It might not be a real boss fight, but he's the... this stupid train. All while trying to kill Ivy with the club versus dump train. It's coming through Pioneer's Bridge. Oh, when I said Pioneer's Bridge, the train, that piece of shit train. Got a train, we got a train, we got a train, train, it's outside, it makes noise, it takes 5 seconds of my time, but then there's another one, then it takes 10 seconds, then we got another train, 'cause there are 3 lanes, sometimes all 3 trains get stuck, and then make a really honking noise.